You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for the Crypto Rundown. Took a bit of a hiatus last week. You know, Crypto Rundown just gets caught up in all the holidays, it seems like, here on the network. It is a Monday show, after all. So we were off for the MLK holiday here in the U.S. last week, but we are back now and rearing to go. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever scintillating, ever compelling Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, if you do like what you hear, this show, the network, our app, wherever you want to leave a review, the more the merrier out there. Clearly, last year was a record year by just about any metric we could throw at it out there. We'd love to see that. We thank all of you who were a part of that. If you'd like to help that continue, just do keep rating and reviewing. Really does help the new folks discover not just this show, but the entire network. And, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want more content in your lives, and who could blame you? Who doesn't in these crazy, tumultuous markets? theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we go on into our first segment, it is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we break down all the action going on in the world's leading digital asset. Yes, I'm talking about Bitcoin. And man, I guess we should take a week off more often, listeners. The Bitcoin bulls liking the action we got out here since our last show. At the end of our last show, listeners, 17,322. That's where we were hanging out in Bitcoin. So well shy of the 20K level. And here we are coming into this show now later in January here for this new year of 2023. And look out above. Bitcoin kicking off the show, 22,751 and a half. Puts it up 5,429 handles since our last show. So there you go. Everyone who didn't vote for Bitcoin in our end of year poll, looking kind of silly right now. Of course, it's only been a week since that poll. A lot could happen over the course of the year. But still, intriguing stuff. Bitcoin just roaring out of the gate this year. You guys believers in these new levels? You think this is just maybe the calm before the next dip? I guess we'll find out as we keep breaking down the numbers here. Remember, speaking of the numbers, listeners, all this data coming at you from our friends over there at Genesis Volatility, now known as Amber Data. But you can still head over to that gvol.io to kick the tires and light the fires. You can also head over to Amber Data, AMBERDATA.io. That also will allow you to kick the tires and light the fires on all the data we're talking about here on the show. And a whole bunch more. We really just scratched the surface here on the show. Looking at how high we got since our last show. The high was a little bit earlier here. Actually, it was on Saturday. So a couple days before showtime here. 23,283. That was the high for Bitcoin. The low, not that long after our last show, 17,202. So pretty much 120 handles below where we closed at the end of our last show on January 9th. So coming on the 10th, we hit the low, and it's pretty much never looked back from there. So quite the rally out here in Bitcoin, listeners. Let's see how that stacks up from a vol perspective out here. Big swing in the underlying means a big swing in vol as well, listeners. Maybe this is a bit of a paradigm shift, moving into a new area of the SKEW. Starting to see some, perhaps, optimism, effervescence out there again. Remember in our last show, we were talking about how Bitcoin vol was getting pretty anemic, down to a 42. Now, that was seasonally low. We were coming off the end of the year. That seasonality is a real thing. People are just not out there to play. Things are light, things are thin. Vol kind of falls off a cliff. That's kind of what we were seeing with that last show. This show, roaring back to life. A 42 2 weeks ago, 63 and a quarter when we kicked off the show. Up over 21 handles. That's a lot of vol coming roaring back in. The same can be said of the SKEW, listeners. The SKEW, a roaring back to life, back to a positive SKEW. We have not seen this in quite some time. This was, when we started the show, and for the majority of the lifespan of this show, this was the way Bitcoin SKEW shaped up. It was always positive. The bid was always to the calls. That's where the hodlers wanted to hang. That's where the optimists, people were in crypto for the upside. They weren't here for the downside. So they were just loading up on the calls. That's where the premium was. Covered calls, everything like that. That all got you great, juicy premium. The puts were not quite worthless, but very low from a vol perspective. Fast forward to last year, the big sell-off, crypto winter 3, 4.0, whatever number we're on now. All of a sudden, the puts took over, and they kind of never looked back. We were at negative SKEW for pretty much the entirety of last year outside of Q1. And we remained there pretty much until our last show. We were just starting to come up to even on our last show. We're still about a negative 0.7 or so, but still pretty much flat. So we had flirted with even a few times. And then now this rally has turned us into high gear, back to the positive, listeners. About 3 and a quarter positive. So nothing enormous. We're not talking a massive change in SKEW, but symbolically, it is important that we are back in positive territory here again. Will we hang out here for long? Again, that is the $1 million question right now. But this move in Bitcoin, 5,000 handles, that's nothing to sneeze at, listeners. And that is going to be reflected in a lot of the numbers we're looking at here, including the OI coming back to life this week as well. Remember, last show out there on Deribit, it was right coming after the heels of December expiration. Took a ton of OI with it. This is pretty much the low point for OI for the year. And we have been building, obviously, over the last couple of weeks. This big move, obviously, helping with that. The calls roaring back to life this week. 189,000 calls open on Deribit, up 68,000 from this time on our last show 2 weeks ago. Puts, same deal, looking nice and firm. 82,000 puts open, 22,000 more than there were this time 2 weeks ago. Of course, that still puts us back in the more than 2-to-1 calls over puts range out there, which Bitcoin usually tends to hang out in now, but maybe a little bit more meaningful now given the fact of just how much upside we've had out here, listeners. Let's get out to the size positions. What are the top 5 positions out there in Bitcoin options right now? Let's find out. I'm guessing there's going to be some shakeup given this big move out here, and I think I am correct. Number 5, we have the 23,000 strike. That is a newcomer to the top 5. No love for the 23,000 strike last week. Well, I should say last show when we were hanging out at 17,000. That's got 13,800 contracts open on it. That is a newcomer to our top 5, followed hot on its heels in the number 4 spot by the 19,000 strike. That's got 14,200 contracts open. Also a newcomer to the top 5. So here we go. Right off the top, listeners. So wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 2 newcomers to the top 5. Let's see what else we can find. Any more shakeups? Yes, number 3. The 30,000 strike, it is back, listeners. On our last show, they finally knocked it out of the top 5. December expiration took all the love for the 30K strike with it. It fell from 13,600 contracts open down to 6,200. knocked completely out of the top 5. Nobody cared about the 30,000 strike anymore. Fast forward 2 weeks, and it's back, baby. 15,200 contracts open. So not just replacing the OI that it lost, but adding new ones. Of course, this is new to the top 5 this week, but this was a stalwart for quite some time in the top positions in Bitcoin. Will it remain there? We shall see. But intriguing stuff. This surge above 20,000 really has changed the game for a lot of people. Number 2, the 20K strike. 15,800 contracts. This one was around last week, but it's up 5,000 from last show. So new players piling in there. Again, that makes sense. That's a very psychologically important level, 20,000. So makes sense to be at a number 2 spot. And the number 1 size position, what is dominating the options tape in Bitcoin options right now? It is the 21,000 strike. Has 18,500 contracts open. That's up a whopping 10,000 from our last show. And it's flirting with the at-the-money strike, so it makes some sense that one would be up there. No love for the 22,000. Couldn't make it out there. Interesting. But 23,000, 21,000, 20,000, 19,000, then, of course, 30,000 popping back up in there in the middle as well. In terms of action, we did see some pretty active days since our last show. Not surprising. We are roaring back to life out here. 79,000 contracts. That was the busiest day we saw. That was on the 13th of January. That looks pretty good compared to some of the recent paper we've seen. If you take out the absurd outlier that was November 8th, that was the FTX madness, that was 113,000 contracts. If you take that out of the equation, then this is pretty much the most active day we've seen in quite some time, if not ever. The closest day I can see here is October 13th with 63,000 contracts. By even a couple of weeks after the whole FTX thing, by November 14th, we were back to 58,000 contracts. So 79,000 contracts is a lot. And they put that up back on the 13th, 10 days ago. So less than that this week, but still things are looking pretty thick out there, given just how much action we are seeing in the underlying. Speaking of action, let's go see if the CME contracts listeners are playing ball. For these, head on over to cmegroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. TWIFO, of course, the name of our show we do every week with CME, This Week in Futures Options. That airs every Thursday on the network. If you want to check out more cryptocurrency content, that is the place to go, especially on weeks like last week when crypto was off for the holidays. TWIFO is the only place you're going to find crypto content on the network. And we did a deep dive into crypto on the show last week on TWIFO, so check that out if you have. Subscribe to the full network, and if you're not doing that, what are you doing? You're missing out on so much content here. Coming at you, nearly a dozen shows here on the network. We will keep you busy. We will keep you engaged, informed, dare I say it, entertained with all sorts of options content out there. In terms of the big dog Bitcoin options, they're off to a good start this week. Already 413 contracts on the tape just today. So again, it's not a broken record, but this used to be, we'd see that much paper in maybe, 10 weeks. It was anemic. And now here we're doing that in a day. So that's a good sign. Last week, let's see what hit the tape. Last week, listeners, 2,668 contracts on the tape last week. Nothing to sneeze at out there in the big dog. Remember, these are the 5X Bitcoin multipliers, which now that we're back north of 20K, getting a little juicier in terms of notional value. And it was the 10,000 puts leading the dance on CME last week. They did 250 contracts. I think there's some verticals going up. I think it was like 15,000, 10,000, so something along those lines. In terms of downside put spreads being active, also the 18,500 puts active in January with about 7 days to go. So some near-dated paper out there. Those went up 130 times last week as well. So intriguing stuff out there. So good to see that the big Bitcoin players are coming to play. Let's see if the little Bitcoin players now, in terms of micro listeners. Are you folks coming to play at CME? So far, that's not been the case this year, but perhaps we can be surprised. Let's see. This week so far, listeners, we've got 11 contracts on the tape. So not a lot of playing going on in the micro contracts. Yet again, in terms of last week, though, a little bit of a different conversation. 872 on the tape. So nothing to sneeze at. Still weirdly less than the big 5X multiplier contract, which is not the way it should be, listeners, but weird nonetheless. The big dog on the micro contracts, the April 20,000 calls went up 352 times last week. So intriguing stuff out there. Kind of a tale of two things. 10,000 puts on the big contracts, 20,000 calls in April on the smaller, the micro contract. Let's get out to a product you folks do trade. That is BITO. As evidenced by the numbers, this thing is tearing it up. 14.5 right now. Man, this thing was playing with the 10 handle not too long ago. now up 3.5 points since our last show. So BITO bringing the thunder these days. The ADV reflecting that as well. 69,000 contracts open out there on BITO right now. It's up 16,000 from our last show. The vol, again, reflecting what we're seeing across the board. Also robust again. 61, up 16 points. Ironically enough, excuse me, that was down 16 points on our previous show. So quite a turnaround there in Bitcoin vol, falling off a cliff and then coming roaring right back a couple of weeks later out here. Let's see what you folks are up to out there. Let's look at a quick top 10 out here in BITO options. By the way, the ADV, 69,000 contracts, like we said, so roaring back to life there as well, up 16,000 from our last show. So not many contracts out there, not many options can put up 70,000 contracts in a day, but BITO does it with ease, and there's many times it has over 100,000 contracts out there. BITO really still capturing a lot of your imaginations out there. Number 10, in terms of size positions, got the Jan 15 calls, 8,800 of those. Number 9, 8,900 of the Feb 11 puts. By the way, it's exactly even in the top 5. 5 calls, 5 puts. That's interesting. Maybe showing no clear bias right now, even though the SKEW may be reflecting some different stuff. Number 8, 8,900 of the Jan 65. Oh, my goodness. 65 calls. Wow. That's some optimistic paper. I have to assume that's some vestigial leftover stuff, listeners, from when Bitcoin is at a higher level. Let me just fire up my data here and let's see if I can find out exactly when those BITO contracts were open. Of course, it's about 9,000 open them right now. They were opened back on April 19th of last year. So, yeah, that makes some sense. Obviously, Bitcoin and BITO itself, much higher. BITO was at 25. So these were still not, shall we say, relevant calls. It's such a crazy strike that is throwing my system into fits, listeners. It does not want to tell me. Okay, so it looks like they sold them for $2.28. That's what I was hoping. And again, that gets back to what we were talking about, listeners. There was a time, April was one of those times, when the call SKEW held dominion. It was just starting to come off at that point, so I'm kind of curious. I'll have to look at the SKEW level was. But they got $2.28 for these things, so I don't think they're regretting these. Was a decent sale. Surprising that these are still open. Maybe take the opportunity to take these off, get while the getting is good out there right now. But intriguing stuff out there. Jan 65 listeners. Number 7, 10,000 of the Feb 21s. Number 6, 10,000 as well of the March 11 puts. Number 5, 11,000 of the March 11 calls. Number 4, about 14,000 of the March 9 puts. Number 3, 16,000 of the June 5 puts. Number 2, 17,500 of the March 14s. And rounding out the top spot, not the 10s. A lot of people had love for the 10s. They were selling a ton of 10 puts. A lot of that seemed to just go the way of the dodo at the end of December expiration. Now the big dog and BITO listeners with 25,000 contracts. The June 8 puts. That is also intriguing. Again, not exactly strike would have expected out there as well. Let's see if we can see when these were open. These were open back at the end of December. December 27th, to be precise, listeners. Wow. We saw a big block of about 10,000 of them going up, paper selling those for $1.10, 5,000 more for $1.14, $1.14 again, $1.16, 5,000 more. Wow. They were piling in these bad boys out here. So, wow. A lot of action, but the earliest print I'm seeing here was from the about 10,000 lot selling them for $1.10, right on the bid. So, crushing these. Interesting. Let's keep an eye on this strike as well. Obviously not going anywhere for a while. Some of these later prints we'll have to determine and see, but it looks like they were probably selling these back. We'll have to look and see. See how the strike shape, or I should say the ball on the strike shaped up over the day. That'll give us more insight into that as well. Let's keep rolling out here now, listeners. Time to explore the rest of the crypto marketplace. It is time to venture into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, listeners. Big moves in Bitcoin means big shakeups in the altcoin universe. Let's go see how it's looking right now. Start with the top 10. Let's see who's holding down the top 10 spot now that, the number 10 spot, I should say, now that everything is rocking and rolling again. It's back to Solana, number 10 here. Wow, Solana having quite the recovery out there over the span of the last couple of weeks since our last show here. Wow, impressive. Yeah, it was trading right around $10 not too long ago, $13 actually, close to our last show. And now rallying all the way up to $24 again. So, wow. Intriguing. Are folks back on the Solana train? Are you back on the Solana train? It seemed like for a while there, it was just tainted inescapably by all things FTX. In fact, we took it off the show. We weren't watching it. It didn't seem like there was a huge demand for it. Back in at number 10. That is intriguing. Number 9, our old friend Doge. Hanging out, by the way, Solana at about $9 billion with the market cap again. Number 9 is Doge, $11.7 billion. Number 8, Cardano, $13 billion. Number 7, Binance USD, $16 billion. Number 6, XRP, $21.6 billion. Number 5, USD Coin, $43.5 billion. Number 4, BNB, $48 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, $66.7 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, $199 billion, just a tick under $200 billion. And Bitcoin looking frothy again, $441 billion worth the market cap in the number 1 spot. And ETH also looking frothy, $16.22. As we're kicking off Showtime, that's up almost 300 handles. It was $13.33 on our last show, so about 289 handles from where it was this time last show 2 weeks ago. So quite the rally for them. In terms of highs, this high was also Saturday as well. 1663 was about as high as it got. The low came a couple of days after our last show on January 11th, 1322 listeners. Vol-wise, SKEW-wise, similar story here in Bitcoin to what we're seeing in ETH. ETH was a 55 on our last show, 67.6 now. So obviously very similar story here in ETH to what we're seeing out there in Bitcoin. SKEW-wise, again, a swing to the positive, negative 1.7 on our last show, positive 1.25 this week. So it's still mostly flat, but again, moving in positive territory. That should be optimistic for all you bulls out there. And calls are just on fire yet again up there, listeners. We're seeing 2 million calls open on Dare. That's up 1.1 million from this time last week. The puts 710,000. That's up 129,000 from this time last week. Let's get on out to the top positions, listeners, the size positions out here in ETH. And number 5, we have the 1700 strike with 146,000 contracts open. That's a newcomer to the top 5, so already some shakeup here as well. Number 4, the 3500 strike again. So there were some more, shall we say, optimistic strikes open in the ETH OI versus Bitcoin. We're still seeing some of that reflected here. 3500, 168,000 contracts open. That's up 16,000 from this time last week. Number 3, the 16,000 strike. 194,500 contracts open there. It's up 66,000 from this time last week. Number 2, the 1800 strike. 229,500 contracts open. That's another newcomer to the top 5. So 2 new additions. And the number 1 spot, still the ever optimistic 4,000s. So the 3,000s went the way of the dodo last show. Those are not back. But the 3,500s are in there still. And the 4,000s still holding on to the top spot. 240,000 of those. That's up 9,000. That's some new positioning, obviously. But it's also, a lot of that paper was just still open from before. So it still remains the size position. Again, our last episode, the 3,000 strike, it fell 282,000 contracts with December expiration. That one just got wiped off the map. It went from 335,000 contracts to 53,000. And obviously, still this week has not regained its spot in the top 5 out there. Let's look at the action we've seen out there in ETH since our last show. And the big day was actually the 12th. So one day before the volume spike that we saw in Bitcoin. And it was 545,000 contracts, which again compares favorably with what we were seeing out here going into the end of the year. Last year, we saw 590,000 in November, 532,000 in December. Obviously, it's not going to beat the FTX madness, 1.2 million on the 8th, 797,000 the week before that. So not going to touch that, but still a pretty active week, all things considered. Not bad for third trading week here of the new year. Let's go out to the CME ETH options, see if they are following suit. And they had a decent week last week, the big ones, 211 contracts on the tape. That's not a ton, but not nothing for this name. This week, we're seeing a whopping 1. So no love there for the big ETH out there. This week, let's see if the micros are lighting it up out here. And so far, again, no paper this week. Let's see if last week had anything to write home about. Yeah, almost 1,000 contracts going up last week on the micro. So that's a little bit encouraging. including the weekly Febs expiring on the 3rd, 1,500 calls. Those did about 600 contracts last week, so that's where the action was. If you were buying those, I'm thinking you're pretty happy right now. Keith hanging out at about 1649 as we're coming into this segment. Let's go out to some of the other altcoin out there. You mentioned Solana. It's clawing its way back from the abyss, listeners. 24.11 right now. 16.58 on our last show. So, wow, that's quite a move. Up 7.5 handles just in the last 2 weeks. Wow. Impressive. XRP, 35.5 cents last time, 42.6 cents this week. So, talking a little over 7 cents in the last couple of weeks. Dogecoin, 8.8 cents now, 7.7 cents back then. So, intriguing stuff. Litecoin, 82 cents, $82, I should say, pretty much even. $90 even this week. So, exactly $8 on the week for Litecoin. Cardano, 31.6 cents last show, 37.6 this week's up about 6 cents. Polkadot, 6.69 now, 4.96 on our last show, up about $1.75. And good old Shiba also getting a little bit of a lift. It was a whopping 0.0000885 on our last show, and coming into this week, 0.000012. So watch out, all you out there waiting for your Shiba Lambos. All right, it's going to do it for this Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of the Crypto Rundown this week. I want to thank everyone out there who took the time to join us live or after the fact. There is a conference coming into town this week, so I will be heading down there for the next few sessions out there to see what's going on in the world of all things securities and options, and indeed volatility. A vol event coming up tomorrow as well, which should be intriguing. Our old friends from exchange formerly known as VolX, now Demand Derivatives, coming to town to talk all things realized versus implied volatility. So that should be fascinating stuff, which means we'll be back live on the network on Thursday, listeners. You still get your on-demand Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. If you're listening live on the pro side, you already heard those last week. You got your bonus there already. And then, of course, live content after that. So you'll be hitting Bootcamp OPR, hitting you at your normal time there on Wednesday, followed by, of course, our Thursday shows, Option Block and TWIFO. Very important for listeners of this show. If you want an extra dose of crypto, TWIFO is the place you're going to get it. Friday, volatility views, and then options oddities after that for all you fun pro folks out there again. Then we're back again next week, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.